It is no secret that Americans are not happy with either of the two major political parties. According to a 2018 Gallup poll, 57% of Americans said there was a need for a third major political party. Back in 2016, 53% of Trump supporters said they were voting more against Clinton than for Trump, while 46% of Clinton supporters said they were voting more against Trump than for Clinton. These numbers, and various others, serve to paint a picture of an America that yearns for another option beyond the established two parties. And yet, in spite of this, the best general election result for a third party in 20 years was Gary Johnson in the 2016 election with 3% of the vote. Why is this? The answer is very multifaceted, including our broken first-past-the-post voting system, the utter lack of media exposure, and various systemic barriers designed to keep third parties from gaining any power. But above all, what keeps people who want a third party from voting for one is a series of slogans and arguments brought up every 4 years, forgotten about, and then recycled when the government that was elected last time fails to deliver, and an ever-increasing quantity of people who want a third option consider voting for one. And in this video, I'm going to break down some of these slogans and arguments, and make the case against voting for the lesser of the two evils. For as long as I can remember, and probably much longer than that, it's been a common refrain to call one's preferred candidate the lesser of the two evils. This is used both as an argument against voting for the other candidate, and also as a platitude to prevent people from voting for third parties. But let's analyze this phrase. If a candidate is the lesser of the two evils, then by definition, that candidate is evil, given that he or she is a part of the aforementioned two evils. Regardless though, it would seem logical at face value to vote for the candidate that wouldn't do as much damage, yet we also must consider the outcome of this type of voting. When you constantly vote for the candidate who is less bad, an inevitable effect is that the common denominator constantly slips for both sides as people get accustomed to worse and more corrupt and more dishonest candidates, until eventually, as became clear back in 2016, both candidates are just flat out bad, with one being a debauched and narcissistic businessman with delusions of grandeur, and the other being a conniving career politician who lies through her teeth constantly to achieve power. When well over half of America wanted a third party, as was the case in 2016 and as it still remains, pundits Republican, and especially Democratic, told us that this election was too important and that we should wait for next time. But when is next time? 4 years later, we're still hearing the exact same rhetoric, as we also did in 2012, 2008, 2004, 2000, you get the point. The reality is that next time really means never. The incumbent two parties will never willingly surrender power to any competitors, and it is naive to think that they will. Next time will be no better than this time. In fact, it'll likely be far worse given the current trajectory. And you can bet that 2024 will also be too important, as will 2028, 2032, and every election after that. We are also constantly told that third parties can't win elections, and that voting for one is therefore a wasted vote, or better yet, that it is a vote for whichever of the two major candidates you oppose. Let's break this down. First of all, can third parties win presidential elections? This year, almost certainly not. But if we ever realistically want a multi-party America, putting aside issues of electoral reform, we must take the leap. Only by voting for third parties can we ever actually hope for them to succeed, because if we keep waiting for a better time to do so, it's never going to happen. The indisputable fact is that most people in America want other parties, but we're typically prevented from voting for them by a vicious cycle wherein we're told that third parties can't win, so almost no one votes third party, and as a result, they of course do not win. This is a type of divide and conquer strategy, whereby we are convinced, and we continue to convince ourselves, that our measly vote for a third party can't change anything, but simultaneously that our measly vote for a Democrat or Republican will change something, for the singular reason that there is already a large other group of people who think the same way. This alone is a subject warranting its own video. The only way to break this cycle is to actively oppose it, rather than hope that there will come a day when the political duopoly voluntarily surrenders power. A third-party vote is not a wasted vote. The only wasted vote is a vote that you don't use at all. Sure, if 5 people vote for someone, it'll change nothing, but the more people vote for third parties, the more impact those parties will begin to make. For example, reaching a certain threshold of votes in individual states can give third parties local ballot access, meaning no more protracted fights to get on the ballot in those states, freeing up party resources to be used on actual campaigns. As well, in the as-of-now unlikely event that a third party gets 5% or more of the popular vote in a presidential election, they are granted millions of dollars in federal funding, as well as automatic ballot access and official minor party status. Beyond that, it is by no means a waste to vote for someone who can't win this time around. We have to think in the long term, because constantly thinking in the immediate term has gotten us to where we are now. When you only ever look at what's directly in front of you, you'll often find that you miss what's coming from far ahead until it's much too late. Tied into this is the bizarre yet constantly repeated notion that a vote for Joe Jorgensen, Howie Hawkins, or Brian Carroll is a vote for Donald Trump. A vote for Joe Biden is a vote for Joe Biden. A vote for Donald Trump is a vote for Donald Trump. And a vote for Joe Jorgensen, Howie Hawkins, or Brian Carroll is a vote for Joe Jorgensen, Howie Hawkins, or Brian Carroll. But it is not a vote for Donald Trump. And the entitlement to another person's vote displayed by those who propagate this notion is truly baffling. I would go so far as to say that the very concept of a spoiler vote is fundamentally flawed. I would explain, but poster boy of spoiler voting Ralph Nader said it better than I ever could. All candidates on the ballot try to get votes from one another. Either they are all spoilers or none of them is. Arrogantly applying that word only to minor party candidates is to treat them as second-class citizens and set them up as scapegoats in close elections. Candidates running for public office on third-party or independent tickets are exercising their First Amendment rights of freedom of speech, assembly, and petition. Insiders may oppose them, but should not demand that they shut up. The right to run and express themselves is equal to that of Democrats and Republicans. And that really gets to the heart of the issue. We are all Americans, and as such we have the sacred right to choose who we wish to represent us in government. So I would posit that shaming people for voting in favor of those who they believe would best achieve that end is fundamentally anti-democratic. Now, I am not above admitting the unfortunate mathematical reality of voting for third parties. America functions under a first-past-the-post voting system, which means that voting for, say, Howie Hawkins when you would otherwise have voted Biden does to an extent hurt him in the election. If you want to vote third party but believe that Biden is better than Trump, or vice versa, you have to be careful with your vote. If, for example, you live in a swing state and want to vote for a third party, I would urge you to consider the unfortunate reality we find ourselves in. However, if you live in a solid red or blue state, there should be nothing stopping you from voting for a third party. Until our system is changed, this will be how things have to work, and for a more in-depth look at electoral reform, I would recommend this video of mine on the subject. If you look at Donald Trump and Joe Biden and think that neither of them is the right choice for America, but either support one of them because it will cause less damage than the other, or don't intend to vote at all, I would implore you to explore the candidates and platforms of various third parties, some of which I will provide links to in the description. No, a third party will not win this election, but that does not make a vote for a third party a pointless or a wasted one. We cannot afford to continue the current broken system, and since it will not change itself, we must make it change. The road to change, to reform, and to prosperity is a long and an arduous one, but ultimately a worthy one. Frederick Douglass once wrote that the whole history of the progress of human liberty shows that all concessions yet made to her august claims have been born of earnest struggle. And if there is no struggle, then there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. Power concedes nothing without a demand.